What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to some more tips and tricks for the Canon EOS R5. So in this video we are going to be talking about manually transferring images off of the EOS R5 over the network to a variety of devices and services. So as usual, the usual disclaimer applies. Network image file transfers is a software feature that's found in Canon's Photo EOS OS, and as such is found on pretty much every Canon camera with networking capabilities. However, I own and use the EOS R5, and that's what I've used for all of the testing and demonstrations in this video. Now that said, the broad concepts and procedures should apply, or should be the same at least, for cameras of a similar software generation. So for example, the EOS R3, R6, and R7 all will be broadly the same thing, though the exact details may vary slightly. Additionally, this will also apply to cameras like the 1DX Mark III and 5D Mark IV, although again, there's going to be some slight differences, but the software there is similar enough that much of what I'm going to cover actually applies. So there are many ways to get the images off of the camera. And as I said, I'm talking about in this video pushing the images off of the camera to a device. So selecting and transferring from the camera as opposed to doing the same thing on the device. In the vast majority of cases, such as with the Canon Camera Connect on a smartphone or tablet, or EOS Utility on a desktop, you can also connect to the camera from your tablet, smartphone, or computer, select and transfer images off from that, and I'm not going to be discussing that. Now, unfortunately, Canon's software engineering solution for how to do this has very clearly evolved organically. And as a result, the menus where things are and what things are capable of doing is, well, it's a bit of a mess, to be quite honest with you. There is no consistency across all methods for transferring images. Now, we can argue how good or how bad that really is in, specifics. But the short of it is that depending on whether you're using FTP, you're using EOS Utility, you're using a smartphone, whatever, there's differences that you will have to be able to deal with. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at three specific areas of transferring from the camera to a device. The first one I'm going to look at is what's arguably the most powerful and capable in the camera, which is the image transfer menu. It's found at the bottom of the Network One menu page. Second, I'm going to be looking at the FTP transfer with set function, as that's pretty useful if you're doing FTP stuff. And finally, I'm going to look at the send to smartphone capabilities because, well, it's completely different from the first two. So we'll start by talking about the image transfer menu and specifically the image select transfer capabilities in the image transfer menu. So to find this, you're going to go to the Network One menu on your camera. You're going to select image transfer down at the very bottom of the menu page, and then you're going to select the image select and transfer menu. Now, when you bring the menu up, you will be presented with two options: direct transfer and FTP transfer. So direct transfer you can read just as EOS Utility. So if you're connecting to a laptop or desktop using Canon's EOS Utility, you will want to use direct transfer to transfer your images. If you were connecting to an FTP server running wherever, then obviously you would use FTP transfer. Now, when I started doing all of this, I was immensely frustrated at the fact that Canon decided that there would be two menu entries here, and I didn't really understand why that would be necessary. I mean, from a clean user interface design perspective, it would be sort of much better to just have, one transfer images menu, especially because the camera can't connect to two different services simultaneously. So I can't be connected to both an FTP server and EOS Utility at the same time. However, it turns out Canon has a very good reason for separating these two things. And again, we can argue about whether or not this is actually the best way to design and implement this thing, but it comes down to the simple fact that Canon tracks which images were transferred and which images had errors in transfer on a per service basis. So you can send different images to EOS utility versus FTP, and the camera will recognize which images were sent where. Now, the image transfer function, I'm going to argue, is probably the most powerful and capable of all of the on-camera transferring off-camera methods. So for starters, you can select single images or whole groups. In fact, there's a whole lot of power in what you can select and how you can select things, so that it's very easy and efficient to make selections to transfer things off. In addition, the image transfer menu fully supports transferring still images as well as videos, and it can transfer all of the still files that the camera can create. So RAWs, JPEGs, and HEIFs, it can handle all of those. Now, you could be specific in the types of files that you want to transfer. For example, if you're shooting RAW plus JPEG or RAW plus HEIF, you can configure that on the image transfer menu. I talked about this in more detail in the menu familiarization video. So let's dive into the select and transfer menu and what's going on there. So depending on which service you're trying to connect to or you're trying to transfer images to, you either will pick direct transfer or you will pick FTP transfer. And then on selecting that, you will be presented with another menu. And this menu will provide 3 pieces of information for you. It will tell you how many images have been selected for transfer, how many images have failed transfer, the camera has tried to transfer and those have failed, and then how many images the camera has successfully transferred. Now, below that block of statistics or data or whatever you wish to call it, you will find either 4 or 5 buttons. So these buttons are select image, range, select folder, all images, and transfer. So first of all, it's important to know that in this select and transfer menu, you can actually select images without transferring or being connected to the service that you want to transfer them to. So you can say, when you don't have Wi-Fi service or access, be picking the images you want to transfer, and then when you get to somewhere where you do have Wi-Fi, instead of having to go select the images that you want and then transfer them, they're already selected and you can simply hit transfer once you've connected to the respective service. So for the 4 selection buttons, select images allows you to select a specific image or images. Its selection is done individually, but you can select many images in that menu at one time. So it's not like you have to keep going back into the menu. The second option is range, and range is basically like holding shift and selecting things on your computer. It allows you to select the start image of a sequential number of image or sequential range of images and the end image of the sequential range of images, and then it will select every image that's sequentially between those 2 images. So it allows you to bulk select things. Now, select folder and all images bring you to a further menu, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but these provide more targeted selection options than either having to select the images individually or just select a range off of the card. Now, of course, the final button in this menu is transfer, and as I said, transfer will only show up if you are actually connected to the respective service, so EOS utility for direct transfer and FTP server for the FTP transfer. When this shows up, selecting transfer will start the transfer and get the images moving. So let's talk a little bit about the select folder and the all images menu. So these two allow for some more powerful selection of images inside either a folder on the card, so you can organize your images in folders on the card. That will be what select folder works with. So if you use that, then select folder will allow you to narrow your operations down to specific folders. versus all images, which does the same or provides the same selection functionality, but it does so using all of the images on the card and not narrowing it down to a specific folder. Now, if you're like me and you don't really use folders, then the two probably are going to work fairly similar, because you probably only will have a like Canon 100 or Canon 101 folder on your camera with images. But if that is the case, my recommendation would be to use the All Images menu, just in case you roll over the 9,999 picture limit of each folder, and the camera then steps to a new folder and you don't notice it. So there are 5 options in both of these menus. The first two are Select Transfer Failed Images and Select Transfer or Images Not Transferred. So Select Transfer Failed Images, if you've already tried transferring images and for some reason they failed, the network dropped out, the server went down, whatever, the camera will track that these images were selected and that it had tried to transfer those images and they failed to transfer. So this first option will select any images that had failed to transfer and as to be transferred again, and then allow them to be transferred. The second option, Select Images Not Transferred, obviously it just selects the images that aren't transferred. So since the camera tracks which images have been transferred, new images that since the last time you transferred images will not be transferred, and they will be selected by this. The third and fourth entries mirror the first two entries in function. However, you will notice that they have a little key only symbol. So the key on this in this case means protected, and it means that these images or these two selections will be limited to only protected images on the card. So you can use the capabilities of the camera to both provide ratings to your images, so 1 to 5 stars, as well as protect them. So if you protect images, then you can use these two functions to narrow everything down to just those specific images. Now, the final option in this menu is Clear Transfer History. Clear Transfer History, as I said, the camera tracks the history of transferred and selected and transferred images, as well as images that have failed to transfer. This clears it. So if you do this in the, and I should be clear that this is also very specific to both folder and service. So if you clear the transfer history in the Canon 100 folder with the direct transfer mode, that will not clear the transfer history for the Canon 101 folder in the direct transfer setting or direct transfer mode, or any folders in the FTP transfer mode. Likewise, if you use the All Images section instead of a folder and you clear the transfer history for all images in the FTP transfer menu or setting mode, that's what I want, that will not clear any of the transfer history for the direct transfer images. So specific to the type, both the folder or all images, as well as the type of transfer that's being done. Now, as I said, I'm going to step away just briefly from the transfer stuff. As I said, you can select based on whether images are protected or not. So you may want to use that as a mechanism for selecting picks, if you will, the best images. And in fact, protecting images on the camera has the side effect of making it harder to accidentally delete them, as it will prevent you from just hitting the erase button and having them deleted. So you may want to use that in the context of, for example, if you're using FTP to upload images in a photojournalist context, you may want to use Protect to be able to quickly select images. Then when there's a break in the action, jump in, select the protected images, and send them. There's a shortcut that's available to do this. To do it, you will go to the Play Form menu and look for the Rate/Voice Memo Record button function setting. In that, look for the fourth option down. It says Protect, Hold Record, or Hold for Record Memo. If you change that, the rate button on the back of the camera, pressing the rate button will toggle between protecting images or unprotecting images, and then you can use that as a fast way in image review to be able to tag images that you want to transfer using the image transfer menu and the selecting of protected images function. So the next thing I want to talk about is FTP transfer with set. Now, I think I briefly touched on this when I was doing the FTP video, but just to recap briefly, since we are talking about ways to get images off of the camera, FTP transfer with set only works for transferring to FTP servers, and it works through the playback mode on the camera. So first of all, you have to enable it in the camera to have this work. So you will find the setting in the Network 1 menu under Wi-Fi settings, under FTP settings. In that menu, transfer with set, you'll have two options, enable or disable. When that is enabled and the camera is connected to an FTP server over Wi-Fi, you will be able to go into playback mode, find the image that you want, and press the set button to transfer the image. Now, just like the image transfer menu, transferring images with set over FTP can transfer both stills and videos, as well as the image quality and type, so RAW, JPEG, HEIF, etc., is honored the configuration that is set in the image transfer menu is honored when you use the set button to transfer images. Speaking of FTP, there's one final way to transfer files with FTP, and it works an awful lot like send to smartphone, which I will be talking about in a second. But this can be accessed whether you have transfer with set enabled or not. All you have to do is in playback mode, hit the quick control button, scroll down to the bottom right icon, and send with FTP will be an option there. Unfortunately, this doesn't appear in direct transfer mode. If you're transferring or connected to a computer via EOS utility, this will just say send to smartphone, and then it won't work. Now, the final image transfer mode that I'm going to be talking about in this video is transferring to a smartphone. Again, this is the manual process, not the automated process, because you can have it automatically transfer to a smartphone as well. So sending images to a smartphone is a completely different process from the other two. Now, obviously, you have to be connected to Canon Camera Connect on your smartphone or tablet. And this process only works for smartphones and tablets that are connected to your camera, again, running the Canon Camera Connect app. Now, on top of that, there is a pretty significant limitation here in that the camera will only transfer JPEG files. It will not transfer RAWs. In fact, if you are shooting RAWs and you use the send to smartphone function, the camera will prompt you on how you want to convert the image to JPEG, or the quality and size that you want to have the image as a JPEG, and then that's what it sends to your smartphone. As far as I can tell, there's no way to override that and have the camera send RAWs. It can send video, but video files, the format or the settings for the video files will limit what can be sent. So for example, anything recorded in Canon log will not be saved on your device or transferred to your device. Now, to do this, we don't go through the menus at all. We simply hit the playback button, find the image that we want to transfer, hit the quick control button, which is the box with the Q around it, or the Q icon on the screen. And then at the bottom of the right-hand column, you will find an icon that's transfer to smartphone. Tap that, and it will prompt you with the quality, size, and resolution options that you can choose to send to the smartphone. When you've selected that, you hit transfer, the image goes, and it will show up on your smartphone or tablet that, again, the camera is connected to. So that is, in a nutshell, the functionality for transferring images off of the camera via Wi-Fi manually. Now, as I said, there's automatic options for virtually all of these, which I have talked about at least in some detail in the individual setup type videos. The only place that I would make a comment on automatic is, in fact, Canon's EOS utility. You will notice that there is no automatic option on the camera for Canon's EOS utility. Instead, the way you trigger automatic image transfer in Canon's EOS utility is to connect to the camera. When you connect the camera to your computer, switch to the remote control mode on the computer where you would have the shooting controls, and then shoot from the camera as you would normally. And when that's set up, or when the EOS utility is set to the remote shooting mode, it will automatically transfer every image you take to your computer as you take them. So that's, again, one of those little oddities. So as I said, this is transferring images manually off of the R5 and its siblings to a computer, smartphone, tablet, whatever, in a nutshell. So if you found this useful or at least informative, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.